All right, so we're going to take a look at where we might be going, at least from our perspective, looking at geopolitical issues. Interestingly, usually I'm more positive than Rob in terms of looking at what might lie ahead. This might be the exception tonight, which brings on potentially the risk of bad behavior, and that exacerbates what happens to portfolios. But we also have to take a look at the fact that a lot of things we're seeing today we've seen before. So let's look at this individual, Ian Bremner. He's a geopolitical specialist. He's spoken at the Malden conferences, and he wrote this book a few months ago called Us versus Them. And the focus really was on three major themes: demographics, populism, and of course, the 1%. So let's start with the demographics part, the baby bust. Now, I am reliably told that the picture you're looking at there is me at 9 months old. And the reason I'm frowning is because I have a globe in front of me, and I've just tried to eat Australia. And the reason I know it's me is you can see, even there, the receding hairline. Let's take a look at the birth rates. We're going to look at first 1960 and then today. So back in 1960, these were the birth rates of 6 or 7 different countries, all of them fairly high. This is, if you will, maybe the way I'd explain this would be, this is the World War II generation, the greatest generation coming back and having as many babies as possible. And we fast forward to 2016, we see that the birth rates in most of these countries have been cut in half. And in fact, given that 2.1 is the break even, most countries in the world are not at this level. So for instance, in Canada, without immigration, our population would already be shrinking. Now, I want to go down memory lane a little bit here. A lot of you aren't old enough to remember at least seeing the original Mary Poppins movie, but you remember these two characters, Dick Van Dyke and Angela Lansbury in the movie. So how many of you have actually gone to see the new movie, Mary Poppins Returns? Ah, great movie, right? So guess who's in the new movie? Angela Lansbury as the balloon lady, and Dick Van Dyke as old Mr. Dawes Jr. And in this movie, he, at the end of the movie, gets up, jumps out on his desk, and does a dance. Now, he is 93, and she is 92. So this is my theory. Is 90 the new 60? So it's my hope that it is, because it'll be a snowy July day before I see 60 again. Now, I'm thinking about all of these aging things, probably because I'm getting older. I found this particular cartoon. It is this older guy and his wife. They're having a conversation, and he's talking about 1971. And the reason I think about 1971 is that's the year I met my wife in actually the elevator at the Hotel Vancouver. It's a long story. We won't get into it. But this is what the cartoon shows. He says, "I was unfaithful to you once with some redhead in the men's room of a pool hall in 1971. I was drunk." She looks at him and says, "That was me." Now, related to getting older, it occurred to me that I have a very good friend of mine. He's a doctor, and he and I have known each other for more than 35 years. We met when we were about 29, and back then he delivered 2 of our children. He had all kinds of babies coming out of the woodwork. That was his practice, young couples and all the rest of that. So fast forward to today, he's now board certified in anti-aging medicine. So he understood how the market was going to shift on him. So this cartoon is sort of how our conversations now go. So after playing soccer with him for 25 years, this is what happens now when I go to see him. Okay, this pill is for your heart, this one's for your eyes, this one's for your blood pressure, this is for diabetes, that's a blood thinner, this is for cholesterol, that's for dizziness. To which I usually say, what's for dessert? So there are issues related to aging, obviously, that are impactful. And that's a large part of economics. Demographics is a part of economics. But of course, the science of economics is the science of explaining tomorrow why the predictions you made yesterday don't come true today. So whatever we say here are based on trends, but not necessarily based on long-term accuracy. And this is an area, interestingly, where Rob and I are not so much differing in our opinion, but I'm looking at something from a secular basis. In other words, what's the impact of aging on inflation? So what you're looking at here is the average old age dependency ratio. How many people over 65 in comparison to the working age population? And over here is the inflation rate of a variety of different countries. And what you see is that yellow trend line. Essentially, aging is deflationary. So older people simply spend less money and accumulate more wealth. And so the question really is this going to be enough to overcome the fact that governments, as Rob says, are continually increasing debt, trying to get inflation to rise? So they're fighting this trend, but I think this trend in the long run has a good chance of winning. And why that would be important is this. What if we don't see significant inflation for an extended period of time, as in decades? What does that really mean for interest rates? What if they don't rise nearly as much as we expect them to?